Hello and welcome to the World Tales Short Story Competition. It's a partnership between UNESCO and the Idries Shah Foundation. And today really is a very exciting day. It's the day we're going to discover who the winners are out of thousands of entries we've received from children all over the world. I'm Saira Shah. I am the daughter of Idries Shah, who wrote the book World Tales. And my father would have been extraordinarily proud that his work inspired this event today. My sister Safia runs the Idries Shah Foundation's Children's Book Project, and she's in charge of getting children's stories out to some of the poorest kids in the world. So I think she's absolutely the best person to explain why stories are important.
Thank you so much to all of the children who submitted stories for this competition the world over. The response was quite simply incredible. At the Idries Shah Foundation, we strongly believe that stories play a vital role in our future. They offer a way into education for children who might otherwise be deprived an education, perhaps due to geography, conflict, displacement, poverty, or even gender. My brother, sister, and I grew up listening to stories. Our father, the writer Idries Shah, collected stories from all over the world. These stories did so much to help us observe people, communicate. We find that we find our sense of humor through these stories. We problem solve through these stories. My twin brother Tahir did much to bring about this story competition in collaboration with UNESCO. He now travels all over the world, often gathering stories. He and Saira, my sister, and I believe that stories still have an incredibly powerful role in critical thinking, in problem solving, in literacy, in tolerance, in understanding others. To sum up, we believe that by giving the world's children stories, we are going to bring into this world more balanced, more fulfilled, and more clear thinking individuals. So if we think of stories as tiny seed bombs of ideas that are going to grow to help us express ourselves, to express new ideas, to communicate old ideas, then we can also see that stories can not only help us and our societies, but they can bring us together and bind us together. Thank you.
J'ai l'immense plaisir aujourd'hui d'ouvrir cette cérémonie de remise.
It is my great pleasure today to open this award ceremony for the Tales of the World short story competition that UNESCO has organized with the Idries Shah Foundation. First of all, I would like to extend my warmest congratulations to the winners of the competition for their excellent short stories, and to all the other participants who, in the midst of a global pandemic, have found the courage to reflect on their future and to put wonderful stories on paper. My gratitude goes, first of all, to the Idries Shah Foundation. Without this foundation, this competition would not exist. My gratitude also goes to the 6 honorable members of the jury who had the difficult task of marking the winners, and they did a remarkable job. Thank you. This project was born at the beginning of 2020 with an invitation to young people from all over the world to share their perspectives, hopes, and fears about the challenges facing our world, such as climate change, racism, and discrimination. The theme was Once Upon a Time in My Future. And we wanted to highlight the importance and necessity of intercultural dialogue, mutual understanding, hope, and compassion to build sustainable peace. The results were astounding. We received thousands of entries from over 100 countries from all regions of the world. The diversity in terms of age, gender, location, topics, and themes was absolutely impressive. I can assure you that it was not easy to narrow down the number of entries to 15 winners, 19 honorable mentions, and 1 special mention. It is these outstanding entries that we celebrate today and their reflections on how to create a world that is inclusive, respectful of human rights, and free from racism and discrimination.
And the Idries Shah Foundation will be sending all the laureates some of Idries Shah's books, and for the older ones of you, copies of World Tales. Now, we have some great prizes for all the laureates. For a start, you're going to become published authors. There's going to be a special hardcover book of the winning stories and the honorable mentions. The honorable mentions will get really cool medals. You'll get medals with your names engraved on them. The bronze laureates, you're going to get bronze medals with your names engraved on them and iPad minis. The silver laureates, you're going to get silver medals with your names engraved on them and iPads. And the gold laureates, you are going to get gold medals with iPad Pros. As we've said, the standard was extremely high. And we're going to hear now a word or two from a member of the jury.
Hello, I'm Abi Elphinstone and I was thrilled to be a judge for the UNESCO short story competition. The entries were fantastic. I was bowled over by each and every one of them. Such variety, such depth of emotion, such skill. So many of you are going to go on to become published authors. Well done to each and every one of you. You did fantastically well, and keep reading, keep writing. Books make you braver, kinder, and infinitely more interesting.
And I have Maria Kypriotou with me, who was also on the jury. Maria, it must have been so very hard to choose between these entries.
Yes, indeed, it was difficult. It was so difficult to choose. All the stories were really wonderful, not only in terms of, the narrative, but also in terms of imagination and creativity. So I think ultimately all of the children and the young people who really took the leap and proposed their stories to us and to the world should be very proud. Congratulations to each and every one of you who submitted stories. I think ultimately my choice was based on my personal criteria, and at the end of the day, I really had to choose with my heart, with the stories that spoke more to my heart, that moved me, and that also stories that made me reflect about the things we are doing now and how this may impact the future.
That's wonderful. And tell me very quickly about the theme, just very, very fast.
Yes, it couldn't be more relevant, not only because of the times we're living, but
it's
also because
once
of
upon a time in my future, isn't it?
Yes, once upon a time in my future. So these times, these pandemic times, the future, not just the distant future, but also the immediate future, become more uncertain than ever, and for a number of reasons. And of course, young people, they have this fantastic capacity to project, to dream, to go beyond the borders that we see today in society, and to reflect critically also on the issues that we deal with today, and imagine how the future can be, whether bright or dim. So
or not.
Very, very interesting.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's lovely to have your input. Now, as you've heard, the theme was Once Upon a Time in My Future. First up, we have the youngest age group, the 12 to 13-year-olds. The 3 laureates are Nina Kotze, Benjamin Se, and Khetam Al-His. In a minute, we'll find out which of them won bronze, silver, and gold medals, but first, here they are reading their stories.
Dear me, you're 13, maybe even 14. I remember those years distinctly. You are tired and broken down. You want to scream and cry, but as soon as you dare open your mouth, it's instantly shut by more workload. It gets better, I promise. I'm writing from the future, and I can tell you this much. There's no more inequality. You become a beautiful young woman in a fair world where everybody gets the same advantages. There's absolutely zero violence and it's free and it's safe to roam the streets. Even the government is honest. To make it all even better, there is no more hatred among the people of your community. I know it's a lot to take in, so let's rewind and take smaller steps. You grow up when you get to high school. There's even more work than the previous year, and then you lose it. You finally raise awareness and you are heard. People start to listen to you. That's when the small changes happened. The community heard your scream and they listened. Let me tell you how it all changed. First, there came absolute love. Everyone loves one another. There is no hate, and even the children's squeals and laughter refill the streets as they play with no care in the world. The adults finally started to teach their children how to love. Then came the cleanup. Everyone started to love one another, began to adore the beautiful country, and showed it by picking up all the litter and cleaning up around their homes. It became a beautiful community once again, all because you, my beautiful girl, finally raised your voice. When the people realized that when you act in love, all these significant changes start to happen. It spread outside of just your community and reached the rest of the country. It is fantastic to see the changes one act of love can bring. There was no more illegal hunting, and even the lion's roar could be heard more clearly. The sky becomes bluer because people start polluting less. You see, it gets better, all because you raised a country of love and equality. Just hold on. It's hard now, but you have a purpose, just like everyone on this earth. My darling girl, people smile because of you. You brought as much love as you gave. The future is a wonderful place full of adventure, opportunity, love, and equality. You make more difference to this country than you could ever imagine. So never give up. I'm writing you this inspiring hope story of your near future so you can start seeing the world through the right eyes now and start making changes now. The future is a beautiful place. When you start realizing that you might not wake up tomorrow, everything, including the world and its people, suddenly become as beautiful as the future you make. Love, future you.
This is my story titled Heat. It was a cool 50 degrees Celsius, the day that I first met my twin brother. Just that morning, I had looked over the only evidence I had of his existence. The photograph slipped in my hand as I sweated against its glossy surface. In the image, two babies lay side by side. It documented an impossible choice. To arrest the rising temperatures, parents can only have one child, as ordered by the Population Restriction Act of 2114. As I raised myself on the streets, I returned to the picture of this other self, which had been found with my abandoned body. That day, the heat radiated against my tender skin as I stood outside Oasis Mart, watching customers stream into the cool lobby. Those patrons still waiting outside, sheltered under omnibrellas, large spidery structures of red and black steel, which blocked out the raging heat and the occasional acid rain. The omnis symbolized citizenship. To hold them was to gain access to the world of the cool. As the sun bore down, the concrete floors sizzled, as if crying out themselves. Sweat trickled through the clumps of hair that stuck to my head. One mother eyed me with suspicion as she tugged her child under her omnibrella, which fanned their faces with cool air and sprays of misty water. As a family who shared an omnibrella, they were relatively low status, but therefore all the more dismissive of uncovered wretches like me. Noticing her glances, one of the security guards moved towards me, ready to lash an uncovered for loitering. I dashed into an alley behind the mall. Here, the humidity in the air captured the stench of food scraps haphazardly flung into 3 rusting dumpsters. As I reached into one of the bins to grab a piece of stale bread, beneath a broken computer monitor, I saw my reflection, which seemed to splinter into two. I turned behind me to see a figure with the same azure eyes and high cheekbones. He walked towards me under the cover of his omnibrella until we stood just a meter apart. I thought about how long I had waited to hear him speak. When my parents told me about you, he explained breathlessly, I never thought I'd find another version of myself running away from the entrance of Oasis Mall. A single tear formed a rivulet over his cheek. I did not know if he would have been told about me. He closed the omnibrella and placed it by his waist. As we moved to embrace one another, my fingers closed over the cool metallic handle. In a fluid motion, I removed it from its sheath and struck the head of my missing twin. As I raced around the corner, I turned over my shoulder for one last look at his face. A momentary expression of shock formed into hate as he felt heat on his skin for the first time.
عنوان قصتي نحن الأطفال انتصرنا. حدث خلاف كبير بين والدي وبين والد صديقتي مها على مساحة أرض صغيرة في الحارة. كان والدي يقول هذه المساحة لنا ولا بد أن نضمها لبيتنا، وكان والد صديقتي مها يقول أيضا هذه المساحة لنا ولن نتركها لأحد. قبل كل هذا كنا جيران، بل كنا مثل العائلة الواحدة، نتقاسم كل شيء ونتبادل أواني المطبخ. وكانت أمي وأم صديقتي مها كأنهما صديقتان منذ زمن بعيد. حيث يحدث عندنا فرح أو مناسبة سعيدة يكونون أول الجيران المشاركين، وفي الأحزان أيضا يشاركوننا حزننا وكأن الحزن لهم. بدأ سوء التفاهم بين العائلتين يكبر على المساحة، لأننا صغيرتان لا نستطيع فعل شيء لحل هذه المشكلة الكبيرة. التزمنا أنا ومها الصمت وقلة الزيارات، وأرجعت أمي كل شيء أخذته من أواني المطبخ وبعض الحجيات. هذه الأرض رغم أنها قطعة صغيرة في الحارة ولكنها أصبحت كبيرة بين العائلتين. رأيت صديقتي مها قرب دكان الحارة وكأنها لا تريد أن تطرح التحية علي، ولكني تقدمت باتجاهها وقلت لها مشتاقة لك كثيرا. هي لم تتكلم ولكن حضنتني وبكت. قلت لها المشكلة تكبر بين أبيك وأبي، وما الحل لكي نعود كما كنا سابقا؟ جاءتها فكرة فقالت لما هذه المساحة تكون لنا نحن، نجمع الألعاب من البيتين ونضعها في تلك المساحة الفاصلة. أعجبتني الفكرة، ركضت إلى البيت وأخرجت كل ألعابي والدمى والأرجوحة البلاستيكية، ومها أيضا أخرجت كل شيء من ألعاب وصور وعرائس حتى ألعاب أخواتها. شاهد والدي ووالد مها المنظر فابتسما وقالا هذه الأرض ستبقى كما هي، لا يملكها أحد إلا أولادنا لله.
And now the results. In the category for 12 to 13-year-olds, bronze goes to Kita Malhissi from Palestine for We the Children won. Silver goes to Benjamin Say of South Africa for Heat. And gold goes to Nina Kotze, also from South Africa, for Once Upon a Time in My Future.
Thanks, Safia, and well done to all of you. You're all going to get prizes, and they were all absolutely fantastic stories. One of the things that struck me most is the enormous challenges some of you have had in your lives and in getting your stories heard. Now, our second age group is the 14 to 15-year-olds, and the laureates are Adona Waldis, Tanishta Nandi, Lara Colville, Martha Davey, Amalia Elisa, and Gabriela Flores Guzman. So in a minute, we're going to find out who the winners are. But first of all, let's listen to the stories.
Letter to my future. To my future self. They say to share your story with the world, lest you be forgotten. But who am I, and what is my story? How can I share with you what I do not know myself? I do not know what the future holds, but I guess you do. My story is neither heart-wrenching nor inspiring, or even one of great courage and strife. I am not a brave young Jewish girl in hiding, like Anne Frank. I am not the first Black president of a supremely white nation, as Barack Obama was. So I suppose that my story is that of a 16-year-old African girl who believes in humanity with all her heart. A girl who believes in the human capacity of hope and capability of change, despite the things she's experienced. I was only 6 when I noticed the stairs. But my mother told me that strangers in the supremely white land we lived in were staring at our beauty. When I was 12, my mother decided that my 14-year-old sister and I were old enough to go shopping by ourselves. We were not old enough to be followed around almost every store we went in by bulky security guards. No one should have to experience that, let alone children. The color of my skin does not make me a thief. One of the guards that followed us had skin that matched mine. Are we as a racial group so stigmatized that society has ingrained in us a lack of trust in our own people, in ourselves? It was then that I realized the true nature of the looks that my mother had said were in awe of our beauty. The looks were of mistrust, the looks were of fear, and even of believed superiority. My heart, my wonderful ideals of this world, and everything I thought to be true was completely shattered. We live in a world where even the love of a mother cannot stop a child from doubting not only her beauty, but even the validity of her existence. How could I be judged by people who did not even know me? Judged by people who only saw me from a distance? Judged by people who saw correlation between my textured hair and a lack of propriety? Why does the color of my skin correlate to my societal status, intelligence, and even relevance as a human being in the minds of those who judge me? Tell me that this is no longer the case in the future. This is not a plea, but something I firmly believe in. As we develop globally, the world has to be ours too. I dream of a future where the darkness of my skin is not only accepted, but in fact appreciated. Tell me that society does not frown upon me for daring to love the brown skin that I was born with, but in fact loves my brown skin too. Beza.
Dear young me, remember the car with a mini garden on its roof you saw in Kolkata? Where there are quite a lot of them now. Don't get too excited when I tell you that the world is a much better place now, because I said better, and the comparative adjective still has a bit of improvement to do. Our planet is healing. Slowly, gradually, but surely. It is green and not grey anymore. The ozone hole is recovering, and so are the icebergs and the glaciers. The air is as pure as a newborn's heart, because almost everybody has switched to cleaner fuels and sustainable ways of garbage disposal. But most of all, you will see a change in the people. These people, they have survived pandemics, massive outrages, violence, and you can see it on their faces. They're healing too, and mostly they're healing together. They finally realize that they are in this together. They've realized the importance that love holds and how everyone is unique in their own right. They've realized that love is love and that the color of your skin holds as much importance as the color of Fruit Loops. After all, they're just as human as you on the inside. And guess what? Renewable energy is being used for electricity in every single household. And nowadays, everyone has a house to live in. I know you like to stay cooped up in your house, but here you can't help but go out to the parks. Everyone is so delightful. Kindness and compassion is
actually a subject being taught in schools now. You'd be surprised to know that students nowadays don't hate school anymore. In fact, they love it. Every single child is evaluated differently on their individual capacity, likes, dislikes, and is not forced to pursue any profession they don't want to. After all, every child is different and they should be free to be so. You might be wondering why I'm writing you this letter at such an ungodly hour. Well, I just wanted to remind you that you should never give up hope in the world and its people. There might be a few instances that you might feel it's too cruel. You might loathe it with all your heart. But remember this, it will have setbacks, it will learn, and most importantly, it will improve. Love your future self.
I wonder if she knew the world was falling apart, I say. Jay sighs. I wouldn't want to. Besides, she was just a kid. Jay slides the letter and photo across the kitchen island, and I read it again. The date is September 4th, 2022. My name is Idries Martin. I'm 10 years old. Did you know someone found a 100-year-old message in a bottle on a beach once? I hope someone sees this quickly, and I hope the future is fun, fun, fun. When I'm grown up, I want to be a doctor. If you find this, please write back at... The letter ends there, the combination of scrawly handwriting and smudging from seawater rendering the address illegible. I'd bemoan its loss, but it's been 76 years since 2022. 76 years of this letter in a bottle floating around with all the other rubbish in the ocean, somehow escaping extensive cleanup efforts and the test of time to end up washed up ashore at the beach earlier today. I think back to what Jay said, that he wouldn't want to know about the plethora of the balance problems. What I want to know? I recall my history classes. This century had a rough start. Climate change, food waste and shortages, water crises, child labor, conversion therapy, and those are just some of the atrocities I remember being on my exams. Watching corporations and world leaders ignore and contribute to these problems would infuriate me. I'd feel helpless, only one person who can do only so much. But I like to think that I would have done what I could. People doing their part and taking a stand is part of what saved us. On an individual level, small changes made big impacts. Plant-based diets became accessible and mainstream, which drastically reduced emissions from an agricultural perspective. People favored renewable energy for their homes, buildings, and cars. Most governments woke up and did what had to be done, albeit slowly. Various toxic chemicals in an array of products were widely banned. Conversion therapy was outlawed. Corporations and their supply chains were regulated to abide by human rights laws. I could continue, but these are just some of the reasons I'm alive today. I think I'd rather know. Jay looks up from his phone. I shrug. If no one knew, no one would have done anything. Ignorance would have killed us all. It nearly did, I almost add. Some people decided to choose ignorance, cowardice, in my opinion, and spread misinformation when faced with painful truths. Jay nods. Guess what? I found a nursing home profile for an Idries Martin, and it has photos of her as a kid. He nods at the photo on the kitchen table. I think it's her. I jump from my seat, stand by him, and look at the screen. She survived the century's worst hurricane and became a human rights lawyer. He reads off the page. You know what, Laurie? He says, scrolling through her profile. She looks like she had fun.
No fear for the future. Something's different now. Something in the atmosphere of this place. I didn't see it until that night on Maggie's Close, and I'm still not sure what exactly changed. But I'm glad it did. I'd only just moved back, and almost everything was slightly different. You wouldn't notice if you hadn't grown up there. But the Barbers by the theatre was boarded up. The eccentric little cafe on Maggie's Close had been commandeered by one of those sprawling chains that are seemingly determined to harvest the quirks of every town. They've turned it into a swish little outfit. Umbrellas that look like they should have ice cream adverts on them. Glass bell jars full of pasta. Waiters in suits and candles everywhere. I was on the slatted bench on the other side of the road. The cafe had those full-length French windows,
and I could happily scrutinise its workings from a good distance away. The flow of the water in the silver swan fountain behind the hornbeams in the park, grumbling to myself about politics and what the world has come to and all that. Then I saw her. She wore a black dress, tight fabric, pinned to her body with bangles and belts as if it were part of her. A high-end fashion logo adorned the back. She rocked slightly as she made her way out of the cafe door. Thread-like heels, vision blurred and embellished from champagne. The heat had sat stubbornly on Maggie's clothes for the whole of August, and this evening was no exception. Of course, she didn't have a jacket. The dress barely reached midway to her knees. Her legs were bare, her shoes weak and her body unstable on them. There had never been street lamps on this road. I think I vaguely recognised her, enough to know whereabouts she lived anyway. Some way off down the road by the church. It would take her maybe half an hour to walk. She took the shortcut. We were always warned about that alley when I was at school. Scary stories, secret names, talks and assemblies about never walking down it alone. Doesn't she know? I followed her. A group of lads rounded the corner in front of her, and I fled behind the theatre wall. There were too many to help her, but I could film, photograph, call the police. Met only by silence, no sound of a scuffle, no scream. My gaze crept back to the people in the alley. The men walked past her, all sharing a joke about the food in the cafe. No comments on her dress, no moves to touch her, no whistles or jeering. They just walked past. One waved to her. She nodded and carried on up the road. She put both headphones in. She walked up to the churchyard gate, then turning, was lost in the darkness. There was no fear in her step that night. As I said, a lot's changed.
L'échange. Nous sommes en 2050. Aujourd'hui, c'est un jour spécial pour tous les habitants de Russie et Brenna. Je m'appelle Larissa et je suis née en Russie. La semaine dernière, notre président a écrit au président de Brenna parce qu'il n'était pas d'accord avec le prix de leurs produits d'exportation. Il était très fâché. J'ai eu peur parce que je pensais que cela pourrait conduire à un affrontement. Mon père m'a dit que ce n'était pas possible parce qu'actuellement les conflits.
The two presidents didn't agree on the price of their exports, and they were angry with each other. They were angry because, all this led to a conflict. And my father said that the conflicts and arms and weapons were banned. He said that both countries did not agree, and they had to follow their own paths. But there was a solution to exchange populations. A group representing inhabitants of each country was selected to go to the other country, and in this manner, each group integrated the respective country. It was a means of getting to know each other, live together, share, and understand and keep peace. I thought it was a very bad idea, but we arrived with my family in Brina. Our family was a Brinian couple. We had a daughter of my age called Safia. Her skin, her eyes, her hair were very different, but she was very beautiful. We stayed with them. The house was well organized. The garden was a paradise. There were so many flowers and fruits. I didn't know the names of any of them. And during my stay, I saw the other members of the family, and they were all very nice. Sophia helped her mother. She worked in the kitchen, did the dishes. I was a bit guilty of not having helped my parents. Safia was good with me, and we became friends. Whereas as to our parents, they shared experiences. They were happy to speak many languages, and I I showed Sophia how to braid her hair. She showed me how to make bracelets with small flowers from the garden. And I thought to myself, how can our country fight with Brina? These Brinians are so nice, they're so friendly. And it's amazing how Sophia and myself became like sisters, two girls from different countries, different continents. And I really hoped with all my heart that Brina and Russia would find a solution. When I was back home, I learned that the dispute had been resolved. For 3 weeks in Brina, I understood that a country can learn a lot about another country, that no country is perfect, but we all have our values. And it is possible to resolve disputes if we understand each other. Wars don't exist anymore. You have to respect differences and live in peace. Today is a very special moment because Russia and Brina have become two countries that care for each other just like the nations of the whole world.
I wake up with the sun struck to my face. The singing of the birds is my daily alarm. I'm surrounded by wooden walls. A pure and discontaminated air reaches my nose. I see through the window how nature dances with the breeze of a beautiful morning. But the beautiful landscape can't help the sadness inside me. When I remember the past, there was a vaccine for the disease that lurking there, but it only generated conflict among the great world powers. It was a matter of the blink of an eye that World War III broke out, and before we could realize it, the nuclear bombs arrived. Everything we knew disappeared. There was no longer any trace of the only society, whether good, bad, or both. We were reduced from billions to only thousands. I leave the cabin and the laughter of the children playing reaches my ear like in the sweetest melody. I see how young people, children, and the elderly coexist in the same courtyard, and I remember after the tragedy, things were not so easy. We ran out of resources, nobody knew what to do, they all sank into despair and sadness of having lost their loved ones. However, there were also some others who could stay with cool head and were sensible. They found a solution. They created a democratic organization without failures. Tragedy brought us together. Little by little, we became a huge and friendly community. Understanding each other was one of the most difficult challenges we had. There were survivors from almost unknown civilizations. Nobody understood them, and there were some who avoided them because they were afraid of them. But it was a matter of time before we unified little by little, since human beings are social by nature. The adults taught them to speak in English, and they taught us the basic of their language as a way of protecting their essence from getting lost. So we were a multicultural community. We made our own system, our resources were only from nature. People continued executing their profession without selfishness. Technology was dismissed, and the few technological resources we were only for interaction between distant communities. Our justice system truly defended our rights without hesitation, although we barely needed it because we became peaceful beings. We live in calm and harmony. We made a warm and smooth community with social equality, respect, peace, justice, without racism or malice. We create our perfect world. I'm I run with the children and play with them in the middle of nature next to a clear stream under a warm and beautiful sun that embraces us. Together we laugh because although we'll always feel that longing for having lost a part of us, of our past, we know we got something better because it doesn't matter how hard or thought the situation can be, as long as we stay together we can always overcome, and so we did.
Again, what brilliant stories. Thank you, all of you. Those were absolutely great stories. And one of the things that really impresses me is how many of you are writing in a foreign language as well, on top of everything else. So, do you want to know who the winners are? Can you stand the suspense? All right, let's go over to Safia and she'll tell us who the winners are.
In the category for 14 to 15-year-olds, bronze goes to Lara Colville of the Netherlands for 76 years at sea. 3 writers were tied for silver. They were Gabriela Flores Guzman from Ecuador for After the Tragedy, Tanis Nandi of India for Dear Young Me, and Adona World Eyes of Ethiopia for To My Future Self. And also tied in this category for gold, we have Martha Davey of the United Kingdom for No Fear for the Future, and Amalia Esta Vallejo Toba of Ecuador for Le Change.
Well done, and congratulations to absolutely every one of you. And next up, the 16 to 17-year-olds. And the laureates are Minse Kim, Yarden Harel, and Zoe Garcia Narvaez.
Virtual Reality by Minse Kim. When I tell my mother that sometimes I forget the controllers are even there, she can scarcely believe me. What do you mean? Her tone is scathing. I feel the sleek plastic between my fingers, so fluid and in tune with my movements, but say nothing. The higher we trudge up the grassy steps, the more I stumble as they blend into a craggy slope. I look down, my chest heaving, to see that her avatar's face is aglow with exertion. Its design is distinctly her, faithful to each wrinkle and streak of grey. Every now and again the face warps, telling me that she's removed her VR goggles. My eyes can't breathe, my mother tells me, her words obscured by wheeze. I grunt, not bothering to pause in my ascent. She could have chosen the seaside package, or the forest one, but she wanted a mountain. When she was 12, her mother was buried on a real one, a proper one. To my mother, graveyard is a heavy word. It arouses flashes of grey, of cold stone and trees, pared to the bone. But this place is greener than grey. If it weren't for the tombstones that line it in rows all the way up to the crest of the mountain, it could be mistaken for a picnic spot. A moth lands on my arm in high definition, the span of its wings as wide as one of my palms. What could there be to complain about? Manufactured, I hear my mother chant like a petulant child. Frustration stings through my chest. I want to tell her that if everyone got what they wanted, there wouldn't be enough soil on the earth. Even our last president was buried here. As we arrive at her father's grave, she squats down and I hear the clicking of her controllers as she tries to uproot the weeds that litter the earth. But she's never been so good at using them, and each time she manages to grasp one, she's so shocked that she lets the button go. I stoop down beside her. Before long, the weeds have formed a limp pile at the border of my grandfather's territory. My mother clambers to her feet and gestures for me to withdraw the stick of incense from her bag. It lights up automatically, the intoxicating scent curling up her nostrils. We sink to our feet and touch our foreheads to the grass at my grandfather's feet. It's easy to forget that his body isn't really here, that his body could be anywhere. I turn my face to my mother as our surroundings fade. A pair of hands descends and removes the goggles from my face. The cloudless sky has been replaced by the exposed beams of a warehouse ceiling. Would you like to extend your session? A man asks as he stows the equipment away. My mother's lips are set in a line so hard that they've almost disappeared. No, I say. Thank you.
Let me dream you a world. I paint a frame of ancient stones, grimy white, weathered, writhed in blood and touched by flames, windswept and sunburned. My forefathers fashioned them into a tower to guard a vineyard. My neighbor's forefathers cleared the vines and sowed olive trees in their stead. And they still stand outside the window, wizened and beautiful, grandfathers of this land. Framed by the window I sketch sloping terraces, golden brown and rusty green, their dry fell earth carpeted with leaves and dark olives. The sun is setting, encouraging me to add a layer of flaming colors to the clear blue sky. It is not the scenery that is remarkable. In the hills both my neighbor and I claim as our own, it is common sight. What is astonishing in the world I dream is that both my neighbor and I are painting the same picture, side by side. Together we brush the twilit air with the slightest hint of firewood smoke. A shared bronze kettle steams lightly among the stones, scented with rich hand-ground coffee. Shoulder by shoulder we engrave the leaves of the trees, tending to the guardians of the land as they nod their aged canopies approvingly. They have been waiting generations for us to learn to paint together. I trace the blue water, streaming between the rocks to caress the green leaves my neighbor grows on new trees along the mountainside. Together we paint pomegranates and grapes, figs and dates, a vision of heaven, our shared home. The sky darkens, fear and doubt creeping back among the stones, but I find courage in my neighbor's eyes, and together we sweep out the shadows. While my neighbor draws a brilliant moon, I sparkle the night with shimmering stars. My neighbor also dreams a world, but we dream separately. The olives wait for us with endless patience, as they have for years, to learn to dream together, to paint our shared landscape alive with all our different colors, to understand that only side by side may we build our home in peace, in shalom, in salam. Let me dream you a world. If hope had a fragrance, it would surely smell like coffee, fresh paint, and olives.
The thing is like this. The world is scary. Tomorrow is scary. And sometimes everything feels like too much for a small body in a vast universe. The thing is like this. The world is scary. But when I feel sad or insignificant, someone comes and hands me an umbrella. And maybe you wonder, what good is an umbrella in this situation? But it is not the object itself that helps me. It is that someone gave it to me. And if I go out to the streets, I can see what happens without getting wet. So I open it and walk over the cobblestones, looking around me. And although it's dark because of the clouds, I can't help but notice certain things. I hear the sound of the tiny drops incessantly running against the windows, the sound of kids playing in the puddles, the adults who run, covering themselves with their briefcases in a way different from mine. I see teenagers who laugh, and around us it rains. And my shoes are soaked, but my ideas are clear, and suddenly I realize that there are fingers intertwined with mine. It's the person who gave me the umbrella. Their eyes are closed, and they inhale deeply. They are not covered like me, and their hair is dripping, but they look at peace. And I do not know why, at that precise moment, I close the umbrella, and suddenly, I am exposed to. I breathe in and out. My eyelashes flutter, and that is when I understand. It is like I said before, the world is scary, but they gave me an umbrella, and it wasn't the object that changed the course of things, but rather the fact that someone took my hand and accompanied me. Peace is all around. Tomorrow, maybe, is less frightening than I thought. And maybe I am small in a vast universe, but apparently the world is more beautiful than I used to believe.
Thank you to all of you for those absolutely beautiful stories. They were lovely stories. Now, do you want to find out who's won? I think your smiles say yes. Let's ask Safia. Let's ask Safia for the winners.
In the category 16 to 17-year-olds, bronze goes to Zoe Garcia Narvaez from Argentina for The World is Scary. Silver goes to Misio Kim of Australia for Virtual Reality. And gold goes to Yarden Harel of Israel for Dream Me a World.
So that's wonderful. Well done to all of you. Now, I'm hoping that at the end of the program, I'm going to have a chance to ask you a few questions, but I'd like to hear from all of you why you love stories. And now, the oldest category, the 18-year-olds. The laureates are Zaria Usman, Alexander Ishu, and Paula Mendez Sordilla.
Human, Not Strangers by Alexander Shu. We're moving away, said Dad to me the day when things began to change. I knew one day I'd move to somewhere new. Where to? I asked. The answer was irrelevant. As we flew, I saw people around me in the plane. Some left when we landed in Arabia, and the others stayed with us. Some asked where I was from. We talked, a touching dialogue between strangers. Some of the passengers were like me. They were going to their new home, as a bird does to change their nest, find a place where they would go back to be safe. When we landed on the island, there were people new to me. I didn't speak their languages, or know the names of their clothes. The carpet smelled soft and elegant, and the air was warm and humid. The sky I flew in was above, night standing still. Our home was white, just as our last one. I like it because it is almost the same shape, a sugar cube shape. It was sweet to have a new place to live. I started school and I made new friends. Friends from Europe I never had, or from the Middle East either, or from South Asia. I thought it nice to meet new people. Where are you from? I would ask. Not from here, they'd reply. Where is your home? It is now here. I lived through the summer in the Gulf. The ocean I saw was green and warm. The dunes of sand, the air parched. The sun shone, golden and bright, filling the world with its light. People I met, they talked gently with their words, not to hurt, just to talk. I thought only birds were able to migrate through the air and over the land. They seemed to be good at it, soaring and landing, then tending to their young, sitting on telephone lines and huddling in the rain, harmonious always. But from here, in the kingdom, it seems that birds are everywhere, not just on the top of my sugar cube house, or in the palm trees. The family who saw me confused at the eatery and bought me the food I didn't know the name of, the man at the cloth store who shared his story of home, the teacher at school who shared the pomegranates with me as she taught me the new language. My teacher, she says we're all human, and I love those words. We are all human. They tell me that maybe, hopefully, I'm not too lost to be scared of everyone. They're all like me anyways. So in the future, in the world, I won't be scared to meet people. I won't know their names. I won't know their customs, who they love and who they've lost, the ones they left behind. I'll know they're human though, and I'll hold the hope that they'll see me as human too, a hope given by strangers. Thank you.
When I was 9, I found an old teddy bear lying on the side of the road. It was small, about the size of my palm, and had stuffing falling out from every end. But to me, it was a dream. The people of my village gave me side eyes and frowned at the sight of me holding the bear. But it wasn't the thievery that bothered them. It was the young girl in a school uniform. They asked Baba, "Why waste your money like this, Khalid?" But Baba frowned and told me to walk ahead. Education was very important to him. He would sit us down and paint a picture of the future he saw for us in every letter we wrote, in every equation we solved. Once upon a time in my future there was light, there were dreams, and there was change. In my pockets were pennies, in my house love. The walls of the kitchen and the bedroom were no longer my confines. Lying on the shelves were rows of books with words I could read, records of music I could understand, and paintings with colors I adored. However, today, as I sit in Mayu, there are still plenty of colors scattered all over the room. The red hues of the mehndi my khala applies to my hands, gold of the bangles that handcuff my wrists, and the white jasmine's arrangement lying in the center. Women from all over the village sit in a circle playing the tolki, dressed in gowns reflecting the light from the extravagant chandeliers hung on the ceiling. My uncle spared no expense when it came to decorations, jewelries, and outfit, which was ironic because apparently he had no other financial option but to marry off his 15-year-old niece, who was declared his responsibility after the tragic death of his sister and brother-in-law. But it was a matter of izzat, he would say. We didn't want anyone saying he cheapened out. Izzat, what a funny word, so delicately placed on the shoulders of every woman in this society, getting heavier as she grows older, yet somehow more fragile. the tiniest gush of wind tearing it to pieces. Honor, reputation, prestige, izzat. Maybe one day I'll live in a village where honor is shred through marrying a girl 23 years younger than you, and reputation by selling off your only daughter because there was no other solution for your poverty-stricken family. Maybe, just maybe, one day I'll live in a world where the birth of a girl isn't followed by a sigh or a cello next time. On that day, we'll hand over crayons to our young girls and watch them color our world. We'll tell them, deepen the blue of the sky by flying planes through them, paint the grass greener with every football match you play, and leave traces of silver from the stethoscope around your neck. Take any other color on this palette you need and draw rainbows upon rainbows until they're enough to build a bridge to your dreams. Kabul hai, but not today.
Once upon a time in my future, I realize that time has passed me by, and that I can no longer count with my fingers the years since you passed away. All in all, though, I'm sure you'd be glad to know of the many ways the world has changed for the better since you last lived in it. If you were here, I would lead you by the hand to the window of our home and prompt you to look outside. I'd point out the green spaces that have been created in the neighborhood, the lack of litter in the streets, the random, small acts of kindness between the members of our community. And in spite of you looking pleased at the sight, it will only take me a few seconds to come to a realization. If I wanted you to understand the full transformation undergone by the world since you left, I'd have to show it all to you in the best way I knew how, with my words. And so I would begin telling you about how our nation's government renewed its commitment to the social inclusion of indigenous people by promoting the enforcement of both local and federal policies aimed at protecting their rights and dignity. I then go on describing how the joy this event brought to our family intensified into elation when we realized what had set it all into motion. That is, the international community banding together to push for the end of the discrimination and violence long suffered by indigenous people throughout the world. It was around the time that I made the choice to get involved and lobby for change myself, and what an age of change it was. Technologies that increased the access to safe, sanitized water were implemented all over the globe, thereby improving the quality of life of millions of citizens. Laws that underscored the importance of fighting climate change by reducing each country's carbon emissions were established, and most importantly, respected. I'd explain all of this to you before rather joyfully making the announcement that even now, wars are almost a thing of the past, with most countries having learned to recognize the great benefits that come with peace. I imagine you'd react with great surprise and delight to the news, and yet a hint of disappointment would remain in the crinkles around your eyes. And suddenly, it would hit me. I'd take your hand again, and together we'd walk up the stairs, step by step, until we arrived at the front of my old bedroom door. Inside, we'd find the one thing that you'd have wanted to see the entire time. Inside, we'd find the granddaughter you never got the chance to meet. She's a true citizen of the world, much less concerned about national borders than about humanity as a whole. She's a glimpse of the beautiful future of our civilization. And Mom, she looks just like you.
Oh, thank you for those incredibly moving stories. I love the hope in them. It's really, really cheering me up here. Now, do you want to know the order of the winners? You're all going to win prizes, but do you want to know the order of the winners? Yes. Let's have Safia tell us who has won what medal.
In the 18-year-olds category, bronze goes to Paulo Mendez Sordia of Mexico for If You Were Here. Silver goes to Alexander Shu of Bahrain for Human Not Strangers. And gold goes to Zaria Usman of the United Arab Emirates for Colors of Misfortune. Congratulations.
Oh, well done to all three of you. It's a terrific achievement for every single one of you kids here today. And we have one more treat in store because One participant didn't enter a short story to our short story competition. Alice O'Mahony entered a poem, and the jury loved it so much. They've awarded her a special commendation. Well done, Alice. And we're going to hear that poem right now.
Women of Ireland. Last night I dreamed of the women of Ireland. I dreamed of days long past, soldiers, the ones in the green, who left their jewels in the bank and purchased revolvers, the ones so often forgotten, the ones who fought and swore, wore breeches, went to meetings, were arrested, the ones they would rather pretend never existed, who bled, who cried for children they didn't ask for, atoned for something that wasn't wrong, cleaned someone's dirty laundry, for they would never be clean of sin, who sailed the boats to England alone and back again, the ones whose children are buried in unmarked graves. They come in flashes, and I will not forget them for as long as I live. We are intertwined. I do not exist without them, nor them without me and those who tell their stories. The pain of its women is embedded in the history of the place I call home, and in my dreams I can see them all. I see Niamh on the back of the white horse, Grania Whale on her ship, Queen Maeve in the bull, Constance with her revolver and a cigarette, Kathleen the doctor, officer and politician, and I see Lillian on the Mayfly, Mary up in the Oris, Katie in the ring. I hear Denise's music, and I see Saoirse and Ruth on the silver screen. We are too big, too colourful, too beautiful for this world we were born into. We are afraid, we are pushed back, and we are ignored, but we cannot give up, because it isn't only us that we fight for. We fight for those who have yet to come into this scary world. They are afraid of the power women and girls possess together, so they pit us against one another. I dreamed of those yet to come, those who might not have to know pain, who will continue to pass these stories down, the keepers of our past, our present and our future, the women and the girls who have dreams as big as life, and are not told that they can't because of who they are. I dreamed of me, my sisters, the women of this country, all colours, faiths, sexualities, shapes, backgrounds, holding each other, holding each other's hands, defying our pasts, celebrating our futures, and walking into them together. I have this vision, this dream that comes to me in my sleep, right on the edge of my mind always, of the artists, poets, soldiers, mothers, daughters, and sisters, my friends, revolutionaries, scientists, and trailblazers, of what is past and what will come. Last night I dreamt of the women of Ireland, and it was beautiful.
So, Alice, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me there? Can you hear me? Hello,
Yes, I can.
Alice. That's an absolutely terrific poem. Now, I hope that we are trying to get up all the kids, hopefully who are willing to speak, or maybe all of them, just so we can see them. But why don't I ask you quickly, because I've got you, just very briefly, what inspired you to write this poem?
I don't know. I think I was thinking a lot about what it's like to be a woman in Ireland and somebody who is a woman in Ireland. Like, I'm very proud to be proud of where I'm from. But I also, like, I can't ignore the things that happen where I'm from. So it's kind of like bittersweet. Because I love it, but also it could be so much better.
And you obviously feel very personally about it. I could see you were getting really quite emotional during that beautiful reading as well.
Yeah, I do. Like, I live in a town where there was a Magdalen laundry down the street from where I went to primary school. I grew up like right next to a mental hospital that's not in use anymore. Like, it's something that does, like, I do think about a lot, and it affects me a lot.
Well, that's wonderful. It's lovely to hear from you. And I see some faces here who I hope we can speak to as well. I don't know if we're getting all the participants up or only the ones willing to speak. But Martha, I know that you bravely volunteered earlier. So can I ask you, just generally, stories, why are stories important, do you think?
I think the main thing that I find about writing stories, and especially at competitions like this where there's stories from all over the world, is that we dwell quite a lot on the present situation. But I think one thing that we can do, especially through story writing, is think about the future that we could win if we fight the injustices and inequalities that we're talking about. And I think stories are aimed essentially to change someone's mind. When you write a story, your aim is for someone reading it or listening to it, that they will think something different afterwards. And I think
even a
that
perspective, perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that has a far larger effect on people who can't necessarily change government policies or anything as large as that, but stories are just as important.
I absolutely agree. And who else here would like to have a quick word? I have some names of people who are brave enough to speak. Is Nina there? Nina's not there, or Paula? Is that Oh, Nina. Hello, Nina. Oh, now I can see names. Hi, Nina. That's wonderful. I need to see names underneath you all. Tell me your views. What do you think about why are stories important? Why do you write stories?
I write stories to inspire people, and I think stories are important, not just the writing of them, but the reading of them, because it's a way to like escape reality. Like you can go to a different time, to a different situation, and see how the world changed. Like if you read stories from long ago, you see the conflicts that are there, and then you read the stories we have today, and you can see the changes that have happened through the stories. So yeah.
So and that I have got I get it through this whole event. I get that you guys feel that your stories can bring about change, and that's wonderful. Paula, I see your name here too. Do you feel that? Do you feel that you can bring about change? And if so, how does writing a story produce change?
Well, I think writing a story is an act of bravery and most importantly, an act of empathy. So by the simple decision to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and to decide to explore a universal human emotion, even if the circumstances that you describe are more specific to you or are more personal given your upbringing, to me, that's sort of the power to appeal to the humanity that is linking us together. And so it's something that connects us all, even when our differences are so stark. Our compassion just sort of binds us, and it's amazing.
I know the optimism and idealism that I'm seeing in these stories. It really does give one a lot of hope. Zaria, do we have Zaria? I'm looking through all the names. You may be not here. I'm literally reading out the names of the people who said they were willing to speak. Zaria, I see you in the corner there. Hello. Would you like to add something to this? Why do you write stories?
I've always loved to craft characters and create plot lines, and I was able to find my own voice through writing. And once I grew older and learned about the complications of society, I wondered what I could be doing to play my part. And so on the road to this, I put my ability to write to a greater purpose than just, I guess, fantasy stories, and started to talk about real topics in efforts to raise awareness, because I do believe that when fiction starts paralleling reality, it starts to spark conversations and it gets people talking about the difficult stuff. And these conversations, they're really designed to bring people together, which is the best way to instigate change.
And bringing people together is really a fairly universal theme going on here. Adonna, I don't know whether we have you. I don't know if there's a second page. Adonna, yes, hello, I see you there. And really, we've been blown away, all of us, the judges, me, everyone else, by how children from all over the world have responded, but also the themes that have been running through your work, the common themes. And they really are idealistic, and they really are about trying to make the future better. Is that something that you would like to take on, Adonna?
Yes, definitely. I feel like my story is essentially a youthful expression of the message that diversity often accounts for societal division and challenges in today's world. It is important to talk about these challenges we face to create awareness and take active steps towards change in a united future. I feel like storytelling is an unfiltered mode of free expression that helps connect young people globally and helps us interact with each other by sharing our ideas, which are based on personal experiences,
That is
further bringing our
wonderful.
words
I'm
to
so
life.
sorry, Adonna, to cut you off a little bit because I'm being told we have to wrap up. But thank you, all of you. You are all amazing. You are going on to amazing futures. So I would like to thank all of you and to everyone who's joined us from all over the world, especially to every child who sent in a story. And what I take away from the tales we've heard today is a real sense that the world needs to change and that kids are ready to make that happen. I think that we all get the message that stories, whether they're pointing to solutions or problems, will help get us there. So good luck to all the kids. It's your turn next. Go out and change the world. Thank you very, very much to all of you. Thank you.